Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Doctor's Eyes Only podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Oschman, and I actually have a co-host with me today. He is the president of Vestia Personal Wealth Advisors, one of my business partners, Brad Quick. Today, I'm really excited about this topic. It's one that you all have requested that we talk about, and I'm glad to have a friend with me while I do it. We're going to talk about how does a doctor actually go about engaging a financial advisor? How do you find one? How do you make sure they're a good one? What should a good advisor do for you? And then what's your role in the whole process? So you should be able to walk out of this conversation with a pretty good understanding of if you're someone who's kind of on the fence, you're like, I think I need an advisor, but I don't know how to find one. You should have the toolkit, if you will, after this conversation to be able to do that. So welcome, Brad. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thanks, Lauren. Super excited to be here. And you're right. This is very near and dear to my heart. It's something you and I have talked about, especially after spending time with my friends. You know, just as background, I spent 15 years in orthopedics. And a lot of my friends and my buddies, as I talk to them about kind of, you know, what their advisor does for them and things like that, and the ones that don't have them, what I learned, there's some consistency as far as kind of some of the things, they don't even know where to start. And so that was something that I talked to you about and said, how do we bring this to my friends in orthopedics and give them kind of the roadmap of how to choose somebody great?
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And what I love about this platform is our listeners aren't just in orthopedics, right? I'm sure that's who will check it out from your LinkedIn and all of that. But, you know, our entire audience at Vestia and of Doctor's Eyes Only, and hopefully some of the broader physician community will be able to hear this and be empowered with this knowledge. So I think that's great. I mean, what's the most basic of the question, do you think, Brad, when we think about, like, this seems like a daunting process, right? Finding, engaging, and getting started with a financial advisor. So I guess, where do we start?
That's a great question. And so I think the most common thing I've heard, again, from my buddies and doing this work is where do I even start? You know, where do I go looking for somebody? How do I go find this person? You know, what's the first step?
Yeah, it's a great question. And unfortunately, this is one that I don't think there's a science to. So I think this is, well, I'll first say our advisors at Vestia are incredible. And I say that not just because I am one and because I get to work with these people and I'm biased, which I am, but also because I do get to work with these people and I get to lead these people. And they, in my opinion, are the best. They 100%. Know what they're doing, working with doctors. They have a lot of specialized knowledge. When you hire one of us, you really get the brain power of all of us. And so the collaborative nature of our firm makes all of our advisors really high caliber. So I'll say that first. We would love to help you out at Vestia Personal Wealth Advisors. But if for some reason, if you want someone local or, you know, you're really starting from scratch, I think asking for the recommendation of someone that you trust, someone who you see their situation to be similar to yours, right? Someone who's in kind of a similar maybe stage of life, a similar kind of professional situation. If you've got a surgery center investment, like complexity, if you will, and you won't know all of the behind the scenes, but I think just kind of looking at who seems like me, who do I trust? Especially if you can find someone that is pretty financially savvy, right? Like every group has a doctor or a couple of doctors who tend to be more financially savvy, or they just take an interest in finance. If one of those people has an advisor, find out who it is. That would be a great place to start.
I think that's fantastic. I guess the other thing that comes up right after that, you know, where do you start? And I agree. A lot of them that have had success with that, they do. That's literally one of the things I found they ask their senior partners. Or to your point, there do seem to be some folks that, whether they got an MBA or, you know, or whether they just are really good with their money and they've found the right person. I think finding that person makes a lot of sense. And that's, I have heard some success from some of my friends for that.
Yeah, so I love that. And I'll edit my answer in response to what you just said. So it's find someone who looks like their complexity are similar, or find someone who's where you want to be, and then find out who's helped them get there.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So I guess the next step is they don't even know, kind of in a lot of cases, kind of what we do. I get that's something when I'm doing some of the trainings for residents and fellows and even some of the attendings, I ask the question, what do you think we do? And that's all over the map. So, what should they be looking for is doing, and it's not picking stocks, right? I think that's a common misconception, but what should they be looking for from somebody that's going to help them with their financial life?
And I think this question goes hand in hand with, how do you qualify an advisor?
Yeah.
Okay. Because it's like, what do they do for you? And then like, what standards are they held to, or what kind of infrastructure do they have in order to do that? And I think it's a little bit of a chicken and egg, right? You could start with qualifying them and then go into what they're going to do for you. You could start with what they're going to do for you. And then once you've checked that box, you could move on to kind of the more nuanced qualifying them.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, what I would be looking for is essentially a family CFO. So you're right. A lot of people, like when I tell someone I'm a financial advisor, I'm a financial planner, they immediately start asking me about the market. Or they want to tell me about their investments, right? The good buy that they made recently, or they want my opinion on where the markets are going. And I'm like, honestly, that is the tip of the iceberg, if that, of what I do. So if a doctor is looking for an advisor, yes, they probably should be able to manage your investments, and they should be able to have a conversation with you to understand what your goals are. Like, what is it that you want your financial wealth to accomplish for you? What is it that you want to get out of life? Because if we're not starting with those questions and using money as a tool, fill those things in for you, then we're missing the whole point, right? You don't need a financial advisor to get the absolute most out of your money. That sounds great in theory. It's not going to bring you any kind of purpose or meaning, right? The things that are important to you, the things that like light you on fire, right? The things that you get excited to get up for, the things that you're excited to look forward to, and that you dream about for your future, that's what your advisor should have an intimate understanding of. And then they should be able to help you take your money and use that as a tool to propel you toward that.
Yeah.
So that's number one. Like if their first questions are about your portfolio, your investments, tactics around that, it doesn't mean they can't do the job. It's just they better pretty quickly get to like, what's it all for? Right? Because that's one thing that I see doctors particularly, and those of you who have been longtime listeners know that we exclusively work with doctors here at Vestia. So we have a pretty good sample size of doctors in finance. And that's one of the things that doctors in particular really struggle with, right? Is this concept of how much is enough? And you can only answer that question with an understanding of what we're trying to accomplish. So the financial planning, the values, the goals, that should be like right in the forefront. Then there are a whole lot of, I'll say, tools that are in the tool belt of a financial advisor that they can use to help you kind of build out a really robust strategy. So investments and managing the investment portfolio is one of those. Risk management, right? Different types of insurance, life insurance to protect your family, disability insurance to protect your income, umbrella insurance to protect your assets in the case of a lawsuit involving a car accident or someone falling down your front steps, right? An advisor should be looking at those things and making sure that you don't have gaps there. They should probably help you benchmark your salaries, your income structure against others in your specialty, in your health system, that sort of thing. That's something that we do. They should help you understand, are you being adequately paid for the work that you do? Or do we need to negotiate in your next renewal, right? Do we need to be looking for something different? They should be asking for an introduction to your accountant or helping you find an accountant if you don't have one, because a good financial advisor should be in touch with a client's accountant to help with sort of tax planning, right? I don't do taxes. I'm not an accountant. There are a lot of decisions that doctors are going to make that will impact their tax picture, right? Or we say, well, this is going to help you in the future, but it's going to cost more tax now, things like that, where we really need to bring a good accountant into the loop in order to be able to have good discussion around that. And then kind of to round things out, under this concept of the family CFO, anything that comes up that has to do with money, you should be able to call this person and they should be able to point you in the right direction or find someone who can help you. Right? So great example. I had a client who called me. This was a cardiologist who called me from the Tesla dealership. This is maybe 2 weeks ago. And he's like, hey, I want to buy the Cybertruck and I need you to figure out how we're going to finance it. So this is not in that laundry list of things that I mentioned, right? But this is something he needed help with. Similarly, I had a client that got some communication from the federal student loan website recently. He didn't know whether it applied to him or whether there was anything he needed to do. He forwarded that over to our team. We're helping him with what he needs to actually take action on. So this person, as your family CFO, really should be able to take whatever is happening that you either need to make a decision on, is going to impact your financial life, and needs to be able to point you in the right direction or help you handle it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that visual is a great one where it literally is anything that touches your financial life. And I think family CFO is a great way to describe that. And so way more than, again, stock picker or investment person, right? So I love that. I love that visual, and that's something it'll be easy to communicate to those, the folks I know on the orthopedic world and my other friends and other specialties. But I think that's great. And the other thing you mentioned, Lauren, obviously, is once you get past what do they do for you, and whether that's the next question or whether the next one is what are their qualifications? How do you know you got the right one? I think maybe that should be where we go next. Is let's talk about what are some of those things that we know you're getting the right person, that they've got the right qualifications, that they're going to be able to do what you need, kind of at the level that you would expect it as a high earning physician.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great question. And this is one that you can Google, right? Questions to ask a financial advisor, how to interview a financial advisor. Where I do think those fall short is it's not how to find a good financial advisor as a doctor, right? Mm-hmm. And so I've heard this from doctors, and some of you in the audience may have felt this or may have this thought kind of in the back of your brain. Doctors are afraid of being taken advantage of, right? And they're afraid of being seen as the dollar signs that they come with versus as the people that they are who genuinely aren't experts here. So this is another thing. When you see behind the curtain helping doctors, these are some of the smartest people that exist in our population, right? Like we spend time with really, really intelligent people who aren't necessarily knowledgeable about this realm, right, of finance. Right. They know everything there is to know when it comes to the body, when it comes to science, when it comes to the joints that they operate on, can do things that I could never dream of doing and do it really darn well. But then we're in this realm of finance where they don't necessarily understand or feel like they know what questions they should be asking. And so the response to that is inaction, right? They just don't do anything.
Right.
So I think knowing it's pretty simple, I think, to qualify a financial advisor, just to understand what you're choosing, right? So you hopefully have already gotten that recommendation from someone that you know, you like, you trust. And so that can go a long way, right? Then what I would be asking after you understand what they're going to do for you and you know they're really going to cover all of it, right? They're going to save you time. They're going to take hassle off your plate. They're really going to allow you to throw things to them. You need to ask them, like, do you work with doctors?
Right.
And that's the simplest of questions, right?
Yeah.
But there are a lot of advisors. You and I both know really great advisors, right? Who I would refer family and friends to in a heartbeat, who are not the best advisor for a doctor.
Right.
And the reason is they maybe work with one or two out of a client list of 100 versus my client list of 100. There's one non-doctor there, and it's someone who's in kind of the industry of medicine. Mm-hmm. I have 99 case studies and examples and accumulated experience that not only allow me to understand doctors' financial lives and where things are coming from, it also allows me to observe trends in medicine.
Right.
It gives me the ability, if there's a proposed tax law change, I'm not thinking about how that's going to impact the broader population. I'm thinking about how that's going to impact doctors. Yeah. Doctors in training, doctors fresh out of training, doctors who are well-established, doctors who are retired. Like those are the people that I'm thinking about. And we're just able to be that much more proactive and serve doctors that much better. You don't have to come to us and say, hey, how's this tax law change going to impact me?
Right.
And I don't have to think like, okay, well, I'll get to you after I've thought about the engineer and the farmer and the business owner and on down the list, right? I'm like, oh, I actually know that right off the top of my head because we just talked about it in our weekly advisor meeting where we share best practices and we analyze this tax law in the lens of, or this tax proposal, right, through the lens of a physician. Understanding, do they work with doctors? If they do, how many? Right? Is it 2 out of 100? Is it 20 out of 100? Like understand what that sample size is, because I think that ability to observe those trends and really, really be relevant, right? That size matters. And then what are the things that you notice if they do work with more than just doctors? What are the things that you notice about your physician clients that are different from your other clients? And how do you work with them to that end?
Yep.
I often use the example when I'm speaking in front of groups. I'll say, if your advisor doesn't know what an RVU is, and that is how you are paid in your contract, that's probably not the best advisor for you. Again, not because they're not a really smart advisor who could do a good job if they took the time to learn. I mean, I could not only tell you what an RVU is, I could tell you what the 3 components are of the RVUs. I could start rattling off different medical specialties and roughly what the RVU averages are, because that's how in that data I am serving the physicians that we work with. And all of our advisors at Vestia are the same way. So that would be the first question, is that, do you work with doctors? The second one is, what are your credentials? So doctors understand credentials, right? They understand board certification. They understand all of that. Now, there are different ways to think about this, right? You could think about this as a box that needs to be checked. Like there's got to be some kind of credential there. I actually do think if someone has a lot of experience working with doctors, does that really well, has come referred from someone that you trust and passes all of the other tests, right? And these questions that I've asked you, that could be a great fit. So I actually am not of the school that being like a certified financial planner or a chartered financial consultant or, chartered financial analyst or any of that is a make or break. However, it's a really good starting point, right? So the gold standard in credentialing for a financial advisor, and this is going to be someone who can cover everything, like we talked about, is going to be the certified financial planner. That's the most recognized. The chartered financial consultant, which is abbreviated as ChFC, is actually the same curriculum with a couple more classes added and no comprehensive exam. So from a consumer perspective, I actually see those as interchangeable. If you find yourself a certified financial planner, that's a CFP, or a chartered financial consultant, I think those are roughly equivalent. There are some more kind of niche certifications, right? Like Brad, you're a certified exit planning advisor. So for physicians who are growing and looking to sell a practice, a business, you have additional expertise in that. I'm a certified divorce financial analyst, so I have some additional expertise in divorce that I've been trained on. We have other members of our team that do have additional certifications for kind of more specific situations. But I think really broadly, you can't go wrong with looking for, like I said, that depth of physician experience and or the certified financial planner, chartered financial consultant. The other thing about those designations is that in order to hold them, you do have to certify that you are going to uphold like a code of ethics. And so that also gives you a pretty good idea. This is something that you'll find on any list that you look up about questions to ask a financial advisor. It's quite the buzzword around financial advisors, and it's this idea of a fiduciary. This is someone who's going to do what's in your best interest, not what's in theirs, right? Not what's going to get me paid the most. And I'll ask you another question that goes to this end as well, or give you another question. But if they have the certified financial planner designation, the chartered financial consultant designation, they have had to subscribe to a code of ethics to put those out.
So it's the licensure, or to summarize that, the licensure or equivalent experience, basically.
Correct.
Where
very similar to like you can be grandfathered in, right? Like there are older physicians who have a ton of experience, who know what they're doing, and maybe are grandfathered into more recent like board certification requirements and things like that. It'd be very similar.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I promise these aren't that hard. So we talked about, do we work with doctors? What are your credentials? The third question I would ask is, are you independent? Okay. So there's a whole industry of financial firms and insurance firms and all of this. And so you can actually have an advisor who maybe works with doctors, who maybe has a credential. When you ask them this question, are they independent? Their firm is actually owned by an insurance company. Or their firm is owned by a certain wealth management company, usually bigger banks, things like that, that are going to reward them, I'll say, for using the bank's products or the insurance company's products first. So what I want, if I'm a doctor and I'm like, I don't have disability insurance and I probably need that, right? Like, I think I probably need that.
Right.
You have a conversation with your financial advisor. You determine, yes, it does make sense. Disability insurance makes sense for your situation. The next thing that I want to see is kind of a shopper of the market, so to speak. Here are and it ebbs and flows depending on the time that you're listening to this, whether it's 5 insurance companies that offer specialty specific coverage for doctors, or whether it's 6 insurance companies that offer specialty specific disability company or insurance for doctors. So if we determine that a doctor, a surgeon needs disability insurance, we're going to go pull a quote from all 5 or 6.
Right.
And we're probably going to show you the top 2 or 3, and then we're going to show you what we would choose and why. And so you can feel really confident that recommendation was given to you because this is the best policy structure and company for your situation, your pocketbook, all of that, versus that's the sign on the door. And so I stopped there, right? I was like, well, we've got a good policy. Here you go. That's going to work for you.
Yeah.
I just don't love that model.
Sure.
So same thing with mutual funds, right? If you're working with certain big banks, they often will give rewards to their financial advisors that are using the bank's products or investment solutions, things like that. Again, you might stack that up against the alternatives and say, this is the premier solution, right? So I want to do that. But you need to have the ability to kind of shop the market and choose a solution because it truly is the best for your situation, and not because that's what's going to make that company or that advisor or whatever the most money, or because they're being pressured with some kind of sales quota or something like that to put that in front of you.
Yeah.
So I would ask that question about independence, understand kind of what those incentives could be. Yeah. And then the last question, and this is probably the most obvious one, although there are a lot of people that don't ask it, or maybe don't ask it until later in the process than they should, is how do you get paid?
Yeah.
So this one is one where there are a lot of different models for people like us, financial advisors, to get paid. The most typical would be what's called assets under management. So this would be a percentage of the amount of money that the advisor manages for you. Typically, that's 1%. Sometimes it's higher on smaller portfolios. Sometimes it'll be like, well, it's 1.5 to 500,000 or something like that. But typically 1% is that's a reasonable quote for an assets under management fee. Here's what I would think about, okay? You can look at the money, you can look at someone's getting paid to do, and you can kind of match that against what they said they were going to do for you. And I think those two things should match.
Right.
What do I mean by that? If an advisor is going to charge you 1% to manage your portfolio, and then they're going to, quote, throw in financial planning, right? Oh, we'll help you with some other stuff too.
Right.
They may really do that and do it well. They may, because they're compensated to manage the portfolio, their focus may be more there.
Right.
Right. So we actually at Vestia have come up with a hybrid fee structure. We do an assets under management, but it's 0.5%. So it's less than that kind of going rate of 1%. And then we have a financial planning fee that doctors pay. And this is a range based on kind of the complexity of your financial life, right? Because the more complex it is, the more expertise we have to bring, the more training we have to have been through, the more, certifications, qualifications that we have to have in order to serve you really well, right? So if you're more complex in your financial life, this fee is going to be a little bit higher. Less complex is going to be a little bit lower. So there is a little bit of a range there. But that's you paying for all that stuff that's not investment management.
Right.
Right. So the reason I love that is because there's actually accountability to be a really good financial planner and take good care of your investment portfolio.
Right.
Right. Because you're paying me to do both.
Yeah.
You're paying us to do both.
Yeah.
There are some firms that will only do the financial planning fee and they kind of throw in the portfolio management. So again, their bent is probably toward financial planning, although there are firms that do a really good job at investment management and they don't charge that percentage fee. So it's just asking questions to kind of understand how they do that, right? And making sure that the incentives they're talking to you about make sense. What I would avoid is someone who tells you they do the work for free.
Right. Yeah.
Or someone who tells you they're going to do a whole lot more for you than what you're kind of doing the financial calculation, understanding that they're going to make, right?
Yeah.
Because then either they have to have a really high quantity in order to make a good living for themselves. And so they can't really give you that personalized attention. And that's something to think about, right? How many clients are they working with? You can ask them that.
Yep.
Are they close to capacity? Do they have room? You want someone that has really good experience, but you also want someone who's going to be able to pay attention to you. Right. If they're going to do the work for free, and I do know some advisors who do that, it's because they're getting paid in other ways, right? There's commission on insurance products that they're going to put in front of you. And by the way, commissions are inherent in insurance. So if you call up an insurance company and ask for a term life policy, a disability policy, the company's just keeping the commission if you didn't use an agent. So commissions in and of themselves are not bad. That's how the insurance industry works. However, there should be a really good reason that relates back to your financial plan that you are choosing an insurance solution, right? If someone says the financial planning service is free and then they put a large whole life policy proposal in front of you, ask what the commission is, and there you will figure out that the advice is not free.
Right. Exactly.
So understanding how that advisor gets paid and making sure that it's transparent, right? The other thing I love about the way that we do things and our fee structure is everything but those small, commissions on disability insurance and all of that, which we can't get rid of because again, that's just inherent in how it works and doctors need disability insurance. On the asset management and the financial planning side, you're paying us. Right. We're not getting paid by a mutual fund company. We're not getting paid by an investment custodian. We're not getting paid for products.
Right.
You are literally paying us. And so you know exactly what to hold us accountable to.
Sure.
And you know exactly what we need to be adding to your life in terms of value for that transaction to make sense for you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. I think that's super helpful, Lauren. I think that, again, based on the discussions that I've had, I think that'll be really useful for folks. The last piece, and this is, again, I was kind of surprised by this question, but, didn't know what their role was in this thing. Like, okay, so I've done all this work. Now, what do I need to do? What am I in the hook for? Right? Am I going to be, on their beck and call? Do I need to be 8 to 5 listen in? Or, how often do we get together? All that kind of things. Kind of what's the role of the doctor in this case, as far as in this relationship?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I'm right there with you, Brad. I think just because I've done this for so long, it's very obvious to me what you get and what your expectations should be and, all of that. But it makes a ton of sense to me that as a doctor who's maybe engaging an advisor for the first time, you have no idea. Right. So I do think if hopefully up front, they're educating you about what that process looks like, right? How often will you meet? How long will those meetings be? There are some advisors who'll do a once a year meeting. I'm actually a proponent of more than that. We try to do twice a year for financial planning clients because we just need to be in good connection, right? And have a good cadence. Once a year isn't enough. I did quarterly for a while and that was way too much. Like people are way too busy for quarterly. So we were always behind and playing catch up. So just ask that question, right? There's no right or wrong in that regard. Just ask that question. Here's another thing that people don't think about, but I think is paramount. All of our advisors have some degree of after hours availability. Right. It may not be like you can reach them 24/7, right? We all have lives and families and all of that. So we can't be on call all the time. But I have one evening a week on my calendar that is open to meet with clients.
Right.
The reason I do that is because, especially in 2-physician households, right? Or household where both spouses are working, one's a busy physician who has, call days and OR days and post-op and all of that, it can be near impossible to line 2 busy people up during business hours to have a financial planning meeting. Right. And so having some kind of after hours availability, understanding how busy physicians are is the simplest thing, but it's really important, right? Yeah, versus trying to make it work to get somewhere during business hours. So I think beyond that, right, just having an understanding of what is their availability. By the way, all of our clients can text call, email us anytime. Again, doesn't mean we'll see it right away unless it's business hours, but we will get back by the next business day. Show up to those meetings. And I would encourage, especially during the onboarding stage, when you're first engaging, even if you have in your household, one of you is kind of does more of the financial stuff, right? And is more interested in finance. And the other is really like, I don't know, that's not my thing. You really both need to show up for the initial part of the financial planning process.
Right.
Because it's household money.
Yeah.
We need to understand what your goals are separately, together. And what if something happens to you, right? What if you are kind of the financial person in the couple and something happens to you? Your spouse needs to know who your financial advisor is and feel really comfortable calling them, right? And they need to feel comfortable that person is going to serve them well. So you both need to feel like, hey, this is we get along with this person. This is going to be a good fit for us.
Right.
So I'd say, even if you don't continue to show up for every single one of those twice-a-year meetings, for my clients, I always ask, I'd love to see both of you maybe once a year. Yeah. The other time, if it's just kind of the financial person in the household who shows up, I'm okay with that. But I like to keep both people copied in on emails and all that. So show up, respond in as timely of manner as you can, right? When we make requests, a lot of times there are things that are time sensitive for taxes, for getting something worked out, getting money moved from one account to another. Oftentimes forms will expire after a certain period of time. We have to redo them. Yep. So I understand. I mean, I'm the daughter of a very busy interventional cardiologist, and I know how busy life is for physician families.
Right.
But as best you can, right? Responding in a timely manner is really helpful. The biggest one, honestly, is keep your advisor in the loop on financial decisions that you make or financial changes that happen between meetings.
Right.
I would much prefer the phone call from the Tesla dealership, like, hey, help me work this out so I can drive this Cybertruck home. Yeah. Than I would meeting with that doctor and having him be like, so bought a Cybertruck. Here's how I financed it. Yeah. Right. Even if we would be in perfect agreement, like he would say, hey, I was thinking about this. And I'd say, that sounds good. Do it. I would much rather be involved on the front end, because sometimes there are better ways to do things than maybe you're even aware of. Yeah. Right. So having that good communication and bringing us into the loop as soon as you can just allows us to serve you better. Yep. So I'd say just, once you hire the financial advisor, you feel good about them being the family CFO, make them part of your team, right? And treat them as such. Yep. And then this is the one that I feel like should go without saying, but doesn't always. And it's just to be respectful to our team. We all have people who work for us. And I think sometimes, especially when you're in the environment of like OR and, life and death situations and needing to, kind of give orders and high stress and all of that, sometimes that translates over to our team. Yes. And that can be challenging for our team members to deal with because we don't work in the same kind of environment. This is very rarely an issue, but I would just say it's something to think about, right? When you're engaging, like I want to be peers and partners with the doctors that we're serving. We really want to be on that level of parity. And so that goes both ways. Right. Treating with respect and responsiveness and all of that. So yeah, I think that's as hard as it gets in terms of what's your job. You have to upload some documents in the beginning, sign things along the way. But really, once you get everything established, your life should get a lot easier from a financial perspective because it's less that you need to keep track of in your head. It's more, I know my Vestia team or my, whatever advisor you choose is going to be reaching out to me when it's time to do that. Right. Or like, oh, I know they've got it on their radar. They'll tell me what I need to do next. And that in and of itself, what we hear from doctors is that's incredibly freeing, right? To have someone that you trust who knows is going to be on it. Like that's worth it because that allows you to get more of what you want out of life.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, Lauren, this has been great. I think I'm actually going to share this to a lot of my friends, especially the ones, there's 2 or 3 that, come immediately to mind who have asked many of these questions. And so I'll definitely make sure I share this out in my network. But this has been super helpful for me today. So anything else I kind of missed in thinking through this? I think those 4 topics are, dead on as far as the common things that I've heard. But anything else kind of on your mind that we missed?
I think that was great. Honestly, your questions were spot on, probably because you got them from the audience. And I know this is a topic that we've been asked to cover. So I'm really excited to get this one out and for doctors to be able to use this as a resource. I would just say kind of as my parting thought if you're listening and you found this valuable, we do have a lot of podcast episodes that cover a lot of different financial topics, share physicians' journeys, things like that. So please do subscribe so that you won't miss any of our future episodes that come out. You can follow us on social media at Vestia Advisors. If you're listening to this and you're like, I don't have an advisor, but after hearing everything that you all are talking about, like we need to talk, you can send an email to myteam@vestia.com. Just say you heard us on the podcast, you're looking to talk to a great financial advisor, and we will get you in touch with someone on our team who can talk with you some about what you're looking for, what your resources look like, and all of that. And we would actually love to have that conversation. So until next time, I'm Lauren Oschman. Take care.
And I'm Brad Quick. Thank you.
The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Vestia Advisors, LLC. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. It should not be construed as legal or tax advice and is not intended to replace the advice of a qualified attorney or tax advisor. This information is not an offer or a solicitation to buy or sell securities. Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Before investing, you should consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses associated with investment products. Investment decisions should be based on an individual's own goals, time horizon, and tolerance for risk. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Diversification and asset allocation do not ensure a profit or guarantee against loss. Consult your financial professional before making any investments. Investment advisory services offered through Vestia Personal Wealth Advisors, Vestia Retirement Plan Consultants, and Vestia Advisors, LLC. Securities offered through Osdale Financial Partners, Inc., 5187 Utica Ridge Road, Davenport, Iowa, 52807. Member, FINRA, SIPC. Vestia Personal Wealth Advisors, Vestia Retirement Plan Consultants, Vestia Advisors, LLC, and Osdale Financial Partners, Inc. are independently owned and operated.